We will compare two slightly different situations. So we have an upper picture and a lower picture. And to the left in both pictures you can see what it looks like from above. So the blue, green and black dendritic trees from the pyramidal neurons could be seen from above. During embryonic development, action projections move forward. Those action projections we see here, they originated in the lateral occipital cortex, which is an area of the brain that registrates shapes. Different cells in the lateral occipital cortex registrate different shapes, and then they send them towards, for example, the extrastriate body area. And the frontalmost part of axon projections consists of growth cones, which are guided by different molecules. Some molecules attract the growth cones of the axon projections, and others repel the growth cones. The red dots in the pictures here represent positions where an attractant molecule is being produced. In the lower picture, the dot is a little bit darker, which represents an, at the moment, higher concentration in the below picture. Depending on the distance from the dot, there is a difference in the concentration of the attractant molecule. The axon projection closest to the dot will therefore curve more than those far away from the dot. And the axon projections in the lower picture will curve more than the axon projections in the upper picture due to the proportionally higher concentrations at the same distance. These dots are not the only source of axonal guidance for these axon projections. There is always a forward moving towards the dendrites thanks to concentrations of attractants right in front of the growth cones. But the dots are there to explain variation in timing of the release of molecules that attract. The result of the variation of these concentrations is that the axon projections enter the dendritic trees at different positions. Neurons sensitive to particular shape or sensitive to particular proportions are activated back in the lateral occipital cortex, as we mentioned. The end of their axons is what we see here at these dendritic trees of regions in the extrastriate body area. From now on, red axons and red neurons represent activated neurons and axons. So activated cells in lateral occipital area correspond to the red axons onto the dendritic trees in the left figures, as we see here. If there are action potentials to axons terminating in the black dendritic tree, the dendrites of the black pyramidal 3 neuron will also be activated. An action potential is sent through its action which go to the neighboring cortical area. If there is also an axonal branch to the green pyramidal 5 neuron, they can activate this neuron as well. Sometimes it may be enough to activate an action potential in the layer 5 neuron, and sometimes it may not be enough to activate an action potential of the pyramidal 5 neuron. But if the dendrites of the pyramidal 5 neuron gets depolarized in addition to the depolarization from the black pyramidal 3 neuron, it may be a strong enough signal so that the pyramidal 5 neuron can send away an action potential towards the subcortical area. So let's go back to the two different situations where the action potentials were more curved in the lower picture than in the above picture. So when particular neurons in the lateral occipital cortex gets activated, they send action potentials through their axons, which again is indicated by red here in the view from above. As you can see in both situations, the first and the second axons from right landed only in the black dendritic tree, which may contribute to depolarization, but not enough to cause an action potential of the green pyramidal 5 neuron. But when axon number 3 and 4 from right gets activated, there are differences. In the lower picture there is once again an activation of the black pyramidal 3 neuron, but in the above picture, where the curvation was not so strong, there is an activation of both black and green dendritic trees. This means that the green pyramidal 5 neuron gets highly depolarized, and this causes an action potential towards the subcortical area. In another situation, we have activation of axon number 5 and 6 from right, Both of them landed in the green dendritic trees, and they also passed the black dendritic trees. And thus they activate the pyramidal 5 neuron, and it sends signal to the subcortical area. In another case, axons number 8 and 9 from right gets activated. In the lower picture, both of them landed in the green dendritic tree and the black, so they also activate the pyramidal 5 neuron into an action potential. But in the above picture, the black and blue dendritic trees are activated by axon number 8 and 9. An activation of the blue pyramidal neuron means inhibition, because the blue pyramidal 3 neuron activates the large basket cell. The large basket cell is an inhibitory neuron and inhibits the cell body of the pyramidal 5 neuron, so it cannot send any signal. So a depolarization from the black pyramidal neuron onto the pyramidal 5 neuron have no effect at all. We will take a look at some human body parts, and we begin with comparing the wrist with other nearby body regions to see how the proportions are beautiful or not beautiful. We begin with comparing the wrist with the upper part of the lower arm. The upper part of the lower arm is a bit wider than the wrist, and this is sometimes considered very beautiful. If we compare instead with the hand, we see that the hand is also a bit wider than the wrist. But if we compare the wrist with the thigh, there is a huge difference in two-dimensional and three-dimensional shape. The thigh is much wider and thicker. Here are 4 different lower arms. To the left are 2 rather normal lower arms, but the rightmost lower arm is very wide. It looks more like a lower leg, actually. And in a way, the lower arm second to the right also looks a bit like a lower leg. So there are both differences and similarities in how shapes of arms and legs are considered beautiful. It is this slightly curved upside-down bottle shape, which both of them possess, but lower legs are thicker than lower arms, and in the same way thighs are much thicker than upper arms. So there may be regions of the extrastriate body area that registrate the general limb shape and send curved bottle shape of the lower part of the limbs to the lateral caudate nucleus as a pathway for beauty. There may also be other regions of the extrastriate body area that registrate arm shapes and leg shapes separately, where relative thickness with other body regions is compared and specific proportions are beautiful or sexy. There is a huge difference between hands and feet. And relative hand size is indeed a factor for sexuality, and this differs between heterosexual guys and boy lovers. This is especially obvious when you compare the size of a hand with the thickness of a thigh. The two body parts are often close to each other. There is certainly a possibility that different gradients and different timing of attractant and repellent agents for the growth cones of axon projections in the extrastriate body area have occurred for regions registrating different body parts. Bigger proportions sometimes go to the excitatory network for pyramidal 5 neurons, and sometimes bigger proportions are not so beautiful and go to inhibitory network instead. And in the same way as it may differ, beauty may differ between different body parts, beauty differ between species. So if we have homologous parts that registrate, for example, the buttock sexual swellings of females in old world monkeys, some species like smaller sexual swellings, and other species like larger sexual swellings, depending on how the neurons fall on the dendrites of inhibitory network or excitatory network to the pyramidal 5 neurons. And the same goes when viewing the girls we mentioned in the beginning of the video, where it may differ between white guys and guys from South Central Africa in how they perceive shape in the extrastriate body area and which shapes that go to visual reward and visual motivation in the lateral caudate nucleus.